This topic is very fitting. This topic is so very fitting when um, it, please do not adjust your television sets. We will have our other co-host will join us momentarily, having a little bit of technical difficulty. How are you doing, Miss Kennedy?
Well, aside from being overdrawn in my health right now, uh, I'm doing great today. You can actually hear me, um, which is an improvement from what I've been over the last 5 days. I can breathe a little bit, which is also an improvement. So I'm going to say thank God for the blessing, the grace, and the mercy. Because listen, if we had to do this a couple days ago, this conversation would not have taken place.
Well, welcome. So let me kick us off here. So, uh, if anybody has ever had a banking account where you get the wonderful surprise that you don't have enough money, your account is overdrawn. And overdrawn, for those of you who may, be in the Bitcoin land, overdrawn is when you have taken out more than you have put in. Let me say it louder for the people in the back. When you have taken out more than you have put in, your account is overdrawn. And so we're going to jump right into it because this has been, what is it, Wednesday? This week has been the longest month in the history of weeks. So, Kennedy, why are we talking about overdrawn? What is overdrawn?
I just feel like there are so many times in this life where we are loyal to a fault, to things that push us past the limit of where our loyalty should reside. And that's loyalty to chasing the bag, it's loyalty to chasing, this future that we're all trying to create for ourselves. It's loyalty to certain jobs and roles that you have that you may feel like I've put way more into this relationship than what I get out of it. So my deposits are much more than anything I could ever withdraw from it. And when I say relationships, I don't just mean with your partner or your spouse. I mean relationships in general, friendships. Um, you know, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a care provider in times, I'm a mother, I'm a wife. So in every single role that you have, those relationships sometimes can feel like, wow, I've deposited so much and I'm not sure if I'm leaving anything for anyone else or even for myself. And so that's what leads to being overdrawn.
Listen, and our guest that actually I'm it seems like last time I was in New Orleans, this time I was in Chicago. I wonder I'll be next year, next month. And our next guest that we'll bring up in a minute, it's interesting because we had this conversation. We were sitting in, I'm at the Becker's CEO and CFO conference in Chicago. They do it every year. It's a pretty good conference. This one was around leveraging women leaders in the workplace, and there were four amazing panelists. And so she and I got in this conversation because I've been seeing this woman pretty much all conference long. I'm like, she's dressed different. She's wearing a baseball cap. She's just rolling a little different than everyone else. We started having this conversation. I didn't mention anything about the show, and we started having this discussion around when you're pouring a lot into others. How are you getting poured into? And for those of you who have stayed with us since we started, and particularly for this season, this third show of the season, that's exactly what we've been talking about. Again, as soon as the eye opens a little bit and that pinky toe hits the ground and you open the door to your hamster cage, you get in that wheel and you until it's time to come home, lay your head down, maybe get a nap and repeat. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. And I think it's very fitting because I'll just say, you, Kennedy, The times that we talk, I'm like, where are you? And I'm one to talk because my my travel schedule is crazy as well, and I
I was
can't keep
about to
up.
say,
I
what?
can't keep up. I can't
I
keep up,
can't
and
keep up with where you are.
probably why you are not feeling well is that you are overdrawn, and our body has a way of telling us, stop, slow down. Now, these are for other people. They're not for me because I I don't
Oh,
know
you're
how to
limited to your
stop.
own
I don't
advice.
know how to I don't know how to slow down. So that's just kind of where we are at the moment. So let's shift. We still don't have our wonderful co-host EJ, but we'll just keep the show must go on. So listen. So why do we get overdrawn, Kennedy? What is it about us getting overdrawn? Why does that happen?
I think so. I think I could speak for myself on this. I don't know why everybody else does this, but I think that we have this imaginary cape that is tied to our necks, and we are trying to save the world. And sometimes we do it to our detriment, right?
Mhm.
It's like always putting everyone else's needs before your own, always thinking about, I could be doing more, I could be giving more, I could be serving more. Um, and I know that that for me is very true. It comes from a place of feeling like I'm on borrowed time in this world, right? As a person who experienced a few life threatening situations in the short amount of years I've been on this planet. I'm gonna say short amount of years, y'all. We won't talk about how many years, okay? Um, but experiencing life threatening situations makes me feel like I'm on borrowed time, and every day I get is grace. And I want to make sure that I maximize the grace that God has given me and the provision to keep going. Sometimes I need to be able to say, enough, be still, and rest. And I think, my grandmother used to say a long time ago that if you don't sit down, God will find a way to sit you down. Right. And so I think this whole respiratory stuff y'all hear is God's way of saying, hey girl, you've been in 4 states in 5 days on 7 planes and in 2 conferences. You need to sit down. And
Set
so
your sit your tail down. Set
set
your
it
tail
down.
down.
Hey, Cheech.
Welcome to the show, EJ. And I'm actually going to bring up our guest, Miss Rebecca. Hi, Rebecca. It's good to see you. I'm so glad you have the. I am so glad you have your hat on because, like I said, we're at a conference where they're telling you business professional, and I'm like, what the heck is that? What is business professional? So, welcome, Rebecca. Do you want to do a quick introduction of yourself and your
Sure.
company? And let's jump right on in.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. I didn't have the hat on at first and then I heard you say that and I was like, I got to put the hat back on. I don't know.
Yeah.
I felt like I was naked without it, but it's so great to be here and meet your co-host. I'm Rebecca Corin, the CEO and co-founder of WAMBI, which is a recognition and healthcare transformation platform that was created in a hospital in 2016. We are women owned, women led. Very proud of that and have had an amazing sort of growth journey since then to help healthcare workers connect back to their why.
There we go. So welcome. And I literally, again, I was semi-stalking her, and I was like, they're dressed in like white pants and white heels and baseball caps at a business conference. And I'm like, she's gonna roll with us at some point. So, Rebecca, we're having this conversation about why do we get overdrawn? Why do you think that is? Why do we get overdrawn as women?
Well, I think we get overdrawn because we really have a hard time saying no. I think that's the first reason. Boundaries, I think, are usually looked at as a negative, but really boundaries allow us to be able to grow in the ways we need to and to stay focused. So I think that's the first reason, like if we
Yeah.
have a boundary up, is it that we're not giving enough, or is it that we're taking the time to focus and give more to areas where we can make better impact. So that's one way that I've seen that. I think the other way is that we're too busy looking outside ourselves all the time. And we don't take the time to look inside and to see, like, what do I need today to show up as my best self? And that's hard for I know all of us, like executives or leaders, and especially women. You know, we don't give ourselves a minute to just stop, go in, so that we can come out in a more present, better way.
I love that.
So I have to ask. So Power Woman obviously attracted you because you control it. You have this look of don't mess with me because I've got all of my ish together and that's who I am. Now that said, how do you manage when you get overdrawn?
Yeah, I didn't say that. I just want to be clear. I didn't say all that. Okay?
You didn't have to say it. I am speaking life over your situation because that's how you were presented to me. So
well,
that's
thank you. Definitely don't have it all together. Single mom, got my own stuff handling all the time. So many balls in the air. And I really relate to what you guys said a little bit earlier, where it's like, everyone needs to slow down, but not me, right? Like I literally remember having a conversation with my team on a Monday about how everyone needs to be taking lunch breaks. And I don't want to hear that no one had time to have lunch. And then on Thursday, I'm eating carrots and like hummus at 3:30 in the afternoon, being like, I'm sorry, I didn't have time to eat lunch. And they're all looking at me. I was just like, okay, this is not what a good leader does. Like, I need to take some inventory and make some changes. So, I mean, I think we all have things we're working on, we just have to own that and just keep kind of going forward in the ways that we're trying to get better. I know I'm always trying to get better and learn from other women and people around me who I really look up to.
I just want to say for the people in the back that Rebecca just said she was single, y'all. This is a catch show. I know that's a whole different show.
I didn't know what kind of show this was.
I was going to go there. I was going to go there.
Going in it.
Oh, that's hilarious.
We
are also the dating show. Interesting, something you said that actually, Rebecca, drawing to the panel that you and I both saw, where the word, I love this word, vulnerability.
Yeah.
And I believe sometimes when we don't say no, or we don't set the boundaries, is that means, particularly as women, I think we might be there might be the perception or the movie we played in our head that we don't have all of our ish together, that we are not, that we're vulnerable, that we have some kryptonite with the cape that you talked about, Kennedy, that we aren't perfection. And I wonder though, if do you think that there is I'll just say it. I know that's unfair. It's unrealistic. It's unfair. That unfair burden that we put on ourselves. I also wonder if is there the belief that we have to work harder, be better than our male counterparts? Do we think that may be why? Or why do we think that we're afraid to show some of this vulnerability?
I mean, in my experience, I feel like vulnerability is something. So I went to law school. I've always been in tech. I've been surrounded in male predominant industries forever. And I think seeming emotional in ways, whether that comes out as passion or fear or frustration or sadness, has the unfortunate sort of tendency to be classified as feminine and weak. And I honestly cannot stand that. That really upsets me. So anyway, in my experience, I personally feel like the more we can embrace power around vulnerability and emotions in whatever way they come, they flow in, they flow out. That's a good thing about emotions. They're not going to last, and they're there for a reason. So that's been my experience of trying to embrace emotions and kind of be real about them. Like if I'm sad and like we read letters of gratitude at my company on team calls that are from patients in real time. And when I read those letters, sometimes I cry. And it's not just sometimes, like I've cried several times reading them. And you know what? Like, I'm proud of that. Like that's being real.
So I love that you went there because I actually hate the word vulnerable because I think it's overplayed, right? And when we talk about vulnerability, we talk about vulnerability, everybody then puts up their Brene Brown mantra. Now, let me be clear. I love Brene, love her. However, when we go to this space, how often do we talk about men in the workplace being vulnerable and having to show their vulnerable side and it being an issue? When that quote unquote vulnerability comes up. So I'd love to ask you the question and just the dynamic in it. Robin Kennedy and I talked about this a little bit before. When you think about overdrawn, right? Think about your bank account is overdrawn. Sometimes it's a matter of timing because they decided to make the withdrawal before your deposit went through. So think about that in your own life, like your personal life and your professional life, because a lot of times, we think of those as one and the same, right? Do you see that this is really around people being overdrawn, really being an issue of timing? Or is it really that issue that you talked about earlier about boundaries?
Frankly, I think it fits into two buckets. Like, one is on the work side, because I think we don't create enough culture at work that fills our cup. Like, we need to have more structures and operationalize ways for people to feel valued and fulfilled. And if we can do that, we're not going to feel drained when we give, because you're starting from a baseline that's elevated enough where you can tap in to some of those resources to give to others easily. So I feel like that's on the work side. On the home side, I think it's kind of like, what are we doing to fill ourselves up personally beyond the things that we have to do? Like, beyond chores, what are we really doing to feed our soul? I mean, I feel like when I met Robin today, it's like a blessing because I'm like at this conference, I'm meeting all kinds of people. All of a sudden she's like, oh, I have this amazing thing, tells me about this awesome show. And now here I am meeting you ladies. It's like, that fills me up. I feel filled up just right now. So that helps me to go back out there and have more conversations and give more,
So I want to throw a twist in here because I hear what you're saying and I'm going to raise you, Queen. I think where I'm at is, and I'm going to be totally vulnerable and transparent, right? I think I'm at a place where work has become so difficult to get through because there isn't that cultural outlet, that connectivity, the why of where I started from is starting to dissipate, right? That my personal stuff that I'm trying to use to balance that so that I do have that joy is now bleeding into the overdrawn because I think right. So I now feel like I'm doing so much of the trying to balance and trying to find the joy because there's so little of it in the workplace that I am really struggling with knowing whether or not the time in that workplace is expired. How do you know? How do you know when something is expired, when it has run its course, when you need to cut bait and move on so that you can stay replenished, right? Because none of us can pour from an empty cup. And so we try to do the personal stuff and the things we're passionate about outside of that space. And that's great for a little while. But it can't be like that forever.
Yeah.
So how do you know when things are expired?
Listen, I think to pull into another analogy, if you open up the refrigerator and something's stinking, it's expired. So when you opened up yourself and, and, and you're not feeling, you're like, this stinks. I think it's expired. And you might want to talk to someone at Spencer Stewart about what your opportunities might be. Shameless plug. I am not above or below it. any event, no, I honestly think and I have this conversation with so many people. My kids can validate that. Then they actually say, I don't know too many people that love what they do and are happy what they do and are joyful. So like I hear my friends' parents say, "Ugh," and I'm like, life is too short. You spend most of your wake hours, even post COVID, if you're not commuting, but you still spend most of your wake hours in that day job. And if it's not bringing you joy, if anything from this pandemic that I think was the best and worst thing to happen, best thing because it opened our eyes to what's most important, the worst because unfortunately so many people had to die because of it. But if it didn't teach us anything other than what is most important and where you invest your time, the debits you need to make into your life, and that's part of what this great resignation was. A lot of
Yeah,
people just said, "This ain't it. I'm
yeah.
not getting my soul fed. The milk stinks."
I agree. I don't think people care to work in a job anymore where it does not fulfill your purpose. Like if people are like, life is short. I think if what one thing that COVID did is it gave everyone, regardless of who you are, a like mortality check. Like I'm not like I like this could affect me. And I
Yeah,
think that a lot of times people go around thinking that things don't affect them. So when we had COVID, that kind of sort of leveled the playing field in a lot of ways. Now people are like, I'm not going to spend my time doing things that are not going to fill my purpose in life. Because just because of what you said earlier, KG, it's like you don't have, if you don't feel like you're doing what you are meant to do, it's just
absolutely,
not worth it.
Well, but
absolutely.
it's an interesting place, and I'd love to get your perspective on this, Rebecca, because there are two schools of thought, right? There is, you talked about the Great Resignation, and now there is, they're calling it the Great Breakup, right? So it's not even about the resignation anymore. For women, it's about the breakup. But you have people who are not interested in breaking up because they actually are not in a position where they can do that. So how do you find that balance and not be overdrawn when, yeah, it stinks, but I don't have the luxury
Yeah.
of walking with my feet right now.
That is a really difficult question. Like I don't have an easy answer for that at all. And I think Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you know what I'm saying? Like if you need to put food on the table for your family, there are some basic needs that we have to have met before we get to the other stuff. So what I'm talking about is kind of gets to a high sort of the other stuff, gets into that. But at the end of the day, like we need to do what we need to do to provide for our family, like that and ourselves. And that is really tough. I guess what I would just say is what I see in healthcare is we have people that, are working at McDonald's, coming to hospitals, going back to McDonald's, working at Walmart, coming back to hospitals. It's like, think of the difference between working at Walmart or working at a McDonald's versus working at a hospital. Like that,
Right.
those are very different things. Even if your role is kind of similar in certain ways, like it's very different to be in a hospital setting. And we need to do a lot in healthcare to help people that are in all sort of areas of work in a hospital feel connected to the patient journey, because they are. Like the person who's like cleaning your room is a huge person who's impacting your care experience when you or your loved one are sick in a hospital room. I don't know if anyone has had this experience, but so many that really make a difference.
Well, Rebecca, first of all, thank you for joining us. It has been a pleasure. I'm thankful that I'm going to get to see you later because I'll be back in the conference. Thank you for joining us. And for those of you, we'll make sure, but on LinkedIn, we can just at you or Wambi, WAMBI. So absolutely, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I love this. This was an absolute treat. Thank you for having me. Let's do it again soon. Mwah.
Yes.
Be well.
Absolutely.
You ladies are
Wait. Why did when I asked her to join us, she said, "Do I have to pay for this?"
I love it.
I started cracking up. I was like, "Girl, no, 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 no." So let's kind of shift now to our do something. And so, as you know, that we always end every show with action. And so, sticking with the theme, know if you're overdrawn, right? It is around, for those of you who still maintain this check register, make a list of your deposits and your withdrawals. I mean, are you overdrawn? And be able to claim those things that are taking away from your deposits. And I would say, what are the things you need to do to get to black? So, meaning you're in the red. For those of you guys who don't know, red means you are overdrawn. Black means you still have some money in the account. So, how do you get to black? And that's Kennedy. You talked to some of that in terms of your joy in finding those joy moments that you can make again add to the deposit side of the register and to get you back to black. And lastly, I'll say, look, um, it's funny that the banks and EJ, you're right on time with this. Sometimes they'll tell you that you have, your balance is low. They don't always tell you when your balance is low. I think they wait a little bit until you make more because they make money on those overdraft fees. Sorry for my financial services folks, but creating your own low funds indicator. Our first show that we did for this season was Swarm, and Swarm we talked about finding your people that you can check in with, and so that low funds indicator might be your people, and it might be asking questions. How will I, we need to ask EJ, how will I know that you have a low funds indicator, that you are getting ready to be in the red? And showing up that way for our friends, our colleagues, our family, I think will definitely help us in terms of help each other as well as help us to know so that we can get back into the black and not be overdrawn because that is not hot. And with that, Miss Kennedy, give us some final thoughts, ma'am.
Yeah, I think I want to leave everybody with I think one of the most important things that you could do is figure out where your relationship with being overdrawn came from. If we can identify the origin, we can start to correct the things that we've learned that may not serve us well. And I think that's really important. I know that my relationship with being overdrawn came from watching two parents who my mother ran her own bakery and she still made 3 meals a day and took care of her children and washed all of our clothes. I literally didn't do my own laundry until college, y'all. I'm almost embarrassed to say that.
Right.
And a father who provided and worked and overtime just to take his family on vacations and make sure that we were able to pick our cars off the showroom floor when we turned 16, right? And so my relationship with being overdrawn comes from watching what I respected about my parents. And so I know I've taken on some of that where I feel like I have to do everything and I have to do it all and I've got to be everything to everyone. And so I would just encourage everybody to figure out where your relationship started with being overdrawn and what pieces of that do you want to keep and what pieces of that don't serve you in this world that we live in today, in this life that you want to create for yourself, and decide how you want to move forward and create some harmony. Because I don't think there's balance in anything, but I do think that there's harmony between the things that we love and the things that we need to do. And not feeling like you have to stay in the red all the time.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you guys for joining us. And again, roll that beautiful bean footage.